A single mother couldn't afford her son's cake. A billionaire saw it and used his black card to pay. She stood there, holding her son's tiny hand, staring at the cake she couldn't afford. And just when her heart was about to break, a man in a tailored suit stepped forward and said softly, "Put it on my card." The bakery smelled like warmth, sugar, butter, and fresh vanilla. Little Ethan's eyes sparkled as he pressed his small palms against the glass, staring at the cake with bright blue icing and tiny toy cars on top. "Mommy, that one. That's the one I want," he said, bouncing on his toes. Mia smiled faintly, though her chest felt tight. She had counted the crumpled bills in her wallet 3 times. It wasn't enough. Not even close. Rent was due, and she had stretched every dollar just to keep food on the table. Still, she had promised him a cake. Just one small cake for his 6th birthday. The lady behind the counter smiled kindly. "That'll be $58, ma'am." Mia swallowed hard, trying not to show the panic on her face. "I'm so sorry. I thought it was cheaper," she whispered. She looked down at her son, who was still smiling, unaware of the ache inside her. "Maybe we can get something smaller." But Ethan shook his head. "Mommy, I really want that one. It's my birthday." Mia's throat tightened. She could feel the stares of other customers, quiet, curious, some pitying. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the worn envelope she had hidden in her coat. The money inside was meant for bus fare and groceries. She hesitated. Then came a quiet voice. "Put it on my card." Mia turned, startled. A tall man stood beside her, dressed neatly in a dark coat and tie. His voice was calm, deep, but gentle. He handed the cashier a sleek black card without another word. I can't accept that," Mia stammered. "You don't even know me." He smiled faintly. "You don't need to know someone to be kind." The cashier ran the card. The man nodded once and turned to leave, as if it was nothing. "Wait." Mia called, grabbing Ethan's hand and rushing after him. "Sir, please, I can't let you." He stopped at the door, looking at her for the first time. His eyes were tired, the kind of tired that comes from years of having everything except peace. "It's just a cake," he said quietly. "Let him have his birthday." And before she could say another word, he was gone, disappearing into the rain outside, leaving Mia standing there with her son, holding a cake she hadn't paid for and a heart full of questions. She didn't know his name. But she would never forget the kindness in his eyes. The stranger in the rain. The bell above the bakery door jingled as Mia stepped out into the gray afternoon. The rain had started to fall harder, soaking through her thin coat, but she barely noticed. All she could think about was the stranger, the man who had paid for her son's cake and vanished into the busy New York streets as if he'd never been there. "Mommy, who was that man?" Ethan asked, his small hand wrapped around hers as they hurried under a bus stop shelter. "I don't know, sweetheart," Mia said softly, brushing a damp strand of hair from his face. "But he was kind. Very kind." Ethan grinned and hugged the cake box tightly against his chest. "Can we give him some cake too?" Mia smiled weakly. "If we ever see him again." But deep down, she didn't think they would. People like him, clean suits, shiny shoes, cards that could buy anything, didn't belong in her world. Her world was paychecks that came too late, bills that came too soon, and nights where she told herself that everything would somehow get better. Still, that night, as she lit 6 candles for Ethan in their small apartment, she couldn't stop thinking about him. The stranger's quiet tone. His tired eyes. The way he said, "You don't need to know someone to be kind." Something about it stayed with her. Across town, in a glass tower that reached above the clouds, the man sat alone in his penthouse office. His name was Adrian Cole, billionaire investor, owner of half the skyline, but a man who hadn't celebrated his own birthday in 10 years. His assistant had called earlier. "Sir, the charity gala starts in an hour. Will you be attending?" He had declined. He always did. Instead, he poured himself a cup of coffee and stared out at the rain. The image of the little boy pressing his face against the bakery glass played in his mind. The boy's joy reminded him of someone, his younger self, before money replaced meaning. Adrian hadn't planned to stop at that bakery. His driver had taken a wrong turn when he'd asked for coffee. But maybe it hadn't been a mistake. Maybe, for once, life had taken him somewhere he needed to be. He reached for his phone, scrolling through unread messages, business proposals, and investment alerts, all noise. Then he paused, his eyes landing on a photo he kept hidden in his gallery, a boy about the same age as Ethan, with the same spark in his eyes. His son. The one he hadn't seen in years. Adrian set the phone down and leaned back, the weight of silence pressing on him. He had all the money in the world, but no one to share it with. Down in a small apartment, a mother was whispering prayers of gratitude for the kindness of a stranger. And high above the city, that same stranger was wondering if he'd finally found a reason to care again. Neither of them knew it yet, but that cake was only the beginning. The chance encounter the next morning began like any other. Mia was running late for her shift at the diner, her old sneakers splashing through puddles as she rushed down the street. Ethan was bundled up in his worn red jacket, holding her hand and swinging his small lunchbox with pride. They were halfway across the crosswalk when a sleek black car stopped just inches from them. Mia gasped, pulling Ethan back in fright. The tinted window rolled down, and her breath caught. It was him. The man from the bakery. Adrian Cole. "Are you all right?" His voice was calm, familiar. Mia nodded quickly. "Why yes, we're fine. I just wasn't paying attention." Adrian's eyes softened as he looked at the boy beside her. "Good. I'm sorry if I startled you." Ethan grinned. "Hey. You're the cake man." Adrian blinked, a hint of surprise crossing his face before a smile tugged at his lips. "Cake man, huh? That's a first." Mia's cheeks flushed. "Ethan, it's fine," Adrian said with a small laugh. "I'll take that as a compliment." He paused, glancing at the clock on his dashboard. "Do you work nearby?" Mia hesitated. "Yes, at the diner across the street." "Let me drop you off." "It's raining again," he offered. She shook her head quickly. No. We'll be fine. You've already done enough." Adrian studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right. But if you ever need help, any kind of help, here." He handed her a business card, simple and elegant, embossed with his name and number. Mia looked down at it, then back up, but he was already gone, the car melting into the traffic like a ghost. That evening, Mia sat at her small kitchen table, staring at the card. Adrian Cole. She'd heard the name before, on TV, in magazines, somewhere in the noise of the world she rarely belonged to. But the man she met didn't seem like someone untouchable. He seemed lonely. When Ethan had fallen asleep, she placed the card in a drawer, unsure if she'd ever use it. But she couldn't shake the feeling that their paths hadn't crossed by chance. Over the next few weeks, life returned to its usual rhythm, work, bills, and long nights. Yet sometimes, when the wind brushed her window or a car horn echoed outside, she thought of him. The stranger with kind eyes. And miles away, in his glass office, Adrian found himself thinking of her too. Every time he passed the bakery, he remembered the little boy's smile. The way the woman, Mia, had tried to hide her struggle behind strength. There was something honest about her, something he hadn't seen in years. He sent his assistant to deliver a small envelope to the bakery a few days later. Inside it was a note, for the woman and her son. No name, no thanks needed. It contained a gift card for groceries and a handwritten line, "Because kindness deserves to keep going." But when Mia received it, she refused to use it. She tucked it away, telling herself that real dignity meant standing on her own feet, even when they trembled. Still, deep inside, she whispered a quiet thank you. When worlds collide, it was a freezing morning in late November when Mia's life took another turn. The diner was half empty, the smell of burnt toast hanging in the air, when a man in a charcoal coat stepped through the door. Heads turned. He looked too out of place, too polished, too quiet, for a neighborhood diner. Mia froze mid-step, the coffee pot shaking slightly in her hand. It was him again. Adrian. He smiled faintly when their eyes met. Still making the best coffee in the city? Her lips parted in surprise. You remembered? How could I forget, he said softly. He took a seat by the window, and she walked over with a cautious smile. So, what brings you here? Looking for another cake? He chuckled quietly. No. Just thought I'd stop by. I was in the neighborhood. It wasn't true. He had driven across the city just to see her. As she poured his coffee, he noticed the faint circles under her eyes. You work long hours, he said gently. Someone has to keep things running, she replied, trying to sound light. Adrian nodded slowly. You remind me of someone I used to know. She never asked for help either. There was something different in his tone, a sadness that made her stop. What happened to her? He looked down at his cup. I let her go. And I've regretted it ever since. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Just the sound of rain tapping against the window. Then Ethan's laughter broke it. He was sitting in the corner booth, coloring a paper placemat. Adrian turned to watch him, a rare warmth softening his face. He's a good kid, Adrian said quietly. Mia smiled. He's my whole world. Does he have a father? Adrian asked gently. Her smile faded a little. No. It's just us. He nodded, his gaze thoughtful. You're doing a good job. Don't ever doubt that. Mia felt her heart catch. No one had told her that in years. When Adrian left, he slipped an envelope beneath the sugar jar on the table. She didn't see it until the end of her shift. Inside was a card, not money this time, but an invitation. Cole Foundation charity event, for children and single parents. A small gesture can change a life. Come if you can. Mia stared at it for a long time. It wasn't her world. She didn't belong in ballrooms filled with diamonds and polished shoes. But something about the note, and the man behind it, made her want to go. The night of the event, she borrowed a simple navy blue dress from a coworker and tied her hair in a loose bun. Ethan held her hand tightly as they entered the hotel ballroom, his eyes wide with wonder. Crystal lights sparkled above, and laughter floated through the air. Then she saw him. Adrian stood near the stage, talking with a group of people in suits. But the moment his eyes found hers, he excused himself and walked toward her. You came, he said softly, his eyes warm with quiet joy. I wasn't sure I should, she admitted. I'm glad you did. He knelt to greet Ethan. Hey, birthday boy. You look sharp tonight. Ethan giggled. Mom said I had to look fancy. Adrian smiled, then stood, his gaze locking with Mia's. You both deserve to be here. Throughout the evening, he introduced her to people, not as charity, not as someone to pity, but as a friend. The woman who reminded him what kindness looked like. And for the first time in years, Mia felt seen. Not as a single mother struggling to survive, but as a woman with strength, grace, and dignity. As the music played and laughter filled the hall, Adrian looked at her again, and for a brief, unspoken moment, it felt as though two worlds had finally found their way toward each other. But neither of them knew that the night was far from over. Something was about to happen that would test everything, their pride, their trust, and the fragile connection that had begun with a simple birthday cake. The storm after the lights. The gala lights shimmered across the marble floor as the night grew deeper. The air buzzed with music, laughter, and the soft clink of glasses. But beneath all the shine and smiles, Mia felt out of place. She had never stood among people like this, men in suits worth more than her yearly rent, women in gowns that looked like dreams. She held Ethan's hand tightly, whispering, "Don't touch anything, baby. Just look." Ethan nodded, eyes wide as saucers. "Mommy, this place looks like a castle." Before Mia could answer, Adrian appeared again, his tall frame cutting through the crowd with quiet confidence. "You both made the room brighter," he said softly. Mia smiled shyly. "We're a bit overwhelmed, to be honest." He chuckled. "You'll get used to it. Though, I'll admit, I've never seen this place look so alive until now." They stood side by side for a moment, watching Ethan laugh with another child by the buffet table. "He's happy," Adrian said, his voice lower now. "You've done an amazing job, Mia." "Some days it doesn't feel that way," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Some days, I just survive." Adrian looked at her with quiet admiration. "Survival takes strength. Don't ever think it's less than that." But before she could reply, a tall woman in an expensive red dress approached them. She smiled tightly, her eyes sharp as glass. "Adrian, darling. I didn't expect you to show up tonight." "And who is this lovely guest?" Mia's hands instinctively went cold. Adrian straightened. "This is Mia. And her son, Ethan. They're my guests." The woman's brows arched. "Oh? How generous of you." Her tone was sweet, but her gaze slid over Mia like she was invisible. "Well, I suppose you always had a soft spot for charity cases." The words hit like a slap. The noise of the room dimmed around Mia. Adrian's expression hardened. "Careful, Olivia." "Oh, relax," the woman laughed. "You know how people talk." She leaned closer, her perfume thick in the air. "Your father's board won't like this little act of mercy. They already think you're losing focus." Adrian stepped forward, his tone cold. "This isn't charity. It's respect. Something you wouldn't understand." Olivia gave a small, mocking laugh. "You'll always be the billionaire trying to fix his guilt with kindness." Then she turned, her heels clicking away across the marble. Mia stood frozen, her heart pounding. "Is that true?" she asked softly. Adrian's jaw tightened. "No. She's part of a world that forgot what kindness looks like." "I don't expect you to understand all this, but I do," Mia interrupted, eyes filling. "You think I don't see the pity in their eyes? You brought me here to prove something to them, didn't you?" Adrian's gaze flickered. "No, Mia, I shouldn't have come," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You don't belong in my world, and I don't belong in yours." She turned away, grabbing Ethan's hand and walking quickly toward the exit. Adrian followed her through the crowd. "Mia, please, wait," but she didn't look back. Outside, rain poured heavily once again, the same kind of rain that had first brought them together. Mia held Ethan close under her thin coat as they hurried down the street. She didn't cry until they got home. That night, while Ethan slept, she sat by the window and looked out over the city lights. The card with Adrian's name still sat in the drawer. She thought of his kindness, his tired eyes, and the look on his face when she walked away. He had meant well. But good intentions didn't bridge worlds like theirs. At least, that's what she told herself. Redemption and rainbows days turned into weeks. The memory of that night lingered like a bruise that refused to fade. Mia went back to work at the diner, back to counting tips, back to quiet evenings with Ethan. She didn't expect to see Adrian again. But he never stopped thinking about her. He had tried calling. No answer. He had even visited the diner once, only to watch her from a distance as she served coffee and smiled politely at strangers. There was a strength in her that humbled him, and a pain in her silence that tore at his heart. One cold morning, Adrian made a decision. He showed up at the diner, no suit, no chauffeur, no headlines, just himself. When Mia saw him standing by the door, her heart stumbled. "Adrian," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Hi." She glanced around nervously. "You shouldn't be here. People will talk." "Let them," he said simply. "I'm not here for them." He walked closer. "I came to say I'm sorry. For the way that night went. For not protecting you from people who judge before they understand." You didn't deserve that. Mia crossed her arms, holding back emotion. You didn't need to protect me. I've been doing that all my life. He nodded slowly. I know. That's what I admire most about you. Her defenses faltered. Adrian, our lives are too different. I work double shifts just to stay afloat. You live in a world where people use kindness like a performance. We don't belong in the same story. He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, then maybe it's time someone rewrote that story. Mia blinked, taken aback. I used to think money could fix everything, Adrian continued. But it can't fix loneliness. It can't buy meaning. That day in the bakery, you reminded me what being human feels like again. Mia's eyes filled with tears. You don't owe me anything. I know, he said softly. That's what makes it real. At that moment, Ethan ran up from the back, his face lighting up. Cake man. Adrian laughed, crouching to his level. Hey, buddy. You came back, Ethan grinned. I told you I would. Mia's heart softened at the sight of them, the billionaire on his knees, the child giggling freely. It felt pure. Unstaged. True. Adrian looked up at her. Let me help, Mia. Not because you need saving, but because we both need something real. She hesitated. Then slowly, she nodded. Weeks later, their lives began to change, not with miracles, but with small steps. Adrian helped her find a better apartment, not as a gift, but as a partnership. Mia started helping with his foundation's outreach programs for single parents. For the first time, she felt like she had a purpose beyond survival. They spent evenings together, Ethan showing Adrian his drawings, Mia laughing more than she had in years. The line between two worlds began to fade. And one Sunday afternoon, standing on the bakery sidewalk where it all began, Adrian smiled at her and said, it started with a cake. But it was never about the cake, was it? Mia shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. No. It was about kindness. He took her hand gently. And second chances. Ethan giggled between them, holding both their hands. Can we get another cake, Mommy? She laughed. Maybe this time, we'll both pay for it. Adrian smiled. Together. As they stepped inside, the warm smell of vanilla and sugar wrapped around them once more. Outside, the rain had stopped. And in the distance, a faint rainbow arched across the New York skyline, quiet, simple, and full of promise. The end. A story that began with a cake, ended with a family. Not built on wealth, but on love, respect, and the kind of kindness that never asks for anything in return.